Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Without further ado, let's welcome Reshma on up to the stage. Thanks so much for coming. Seriously? Seriously? Wow. All right, I'm going to make people do it twice again. Hey, Reshma, thanks for coming.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good.
Thanks for joining us here. And yeah, we should do a quick shout out to Grand Central Tech as well. This is the space that we're in. Matt standing with the backwards cap, waving at everybody back there. This is a brand new space. They took applications and they now are hosting 8 startups. Is that right? 19 startups. They're hosting 19 startups in this space. So you can find Matt or Charlie's floating around here somewhere and find out more about what they're up to. So, Reshma, we'd love to dive right in. You've done a lot of different things. You're currently working full-time as the founder of Girls Who Code, and we're definitely going to dive into that. But I'd love to start with some of the many things that you've done before that. And I wonder if you could, well, let's see. Why don't we start with, you were the deputy public advocate for New York City. And I think that might be a good place to start. I wonder if you could start by telling us what a deputy public advocate does.
I worked for Bill de Blasio, who was the public advocate of New York City. And basically, the public advocate is the city's advocate. You fight for underserved communities. You're second in line, so if something happens to the mayor, you become the mayor. And it's kind of been this job that has really reflected the person who's sat in it. And so I was hired to run the Fund for Public Advocacy, which is a 501c3 that's within the office.
Okay, great. What percentage of your time was spent executing that fund versus working on other initiatives?
So 100% of my time was spent working on the Fund for Public Advocacy until I started Girls Who Code.
Great.
And so, you know, basically, I guess a little bit about me. I'm a failed politician. A lot of my life and my story is about failure. I'm a huge fan of failure, as weird as that may sound, because I think oftentimes people like me sit here and you're like, holy cow, like, how'd she do that? And, you know, I think it's important for us as entrepreneurs, as leaders, to make sure that we share with you how hard it was and how challenging it was. So I came to being deputy public advocate because I lost my congressional race. And in 2010, I ran for Congress against an 18-year incumbent because I thought that that was a great idea. I had no idea what I was doing. I had never run a campaign before. My life was run by 20-year-olds, but I swore that I was going to win. And so it was 10 months of the best 10 months of my life because everything was like jumping off a cliff. Of course, my first television interview had to be on Chris Matthews because you just have to make it really tough. You know, I had raised my first $50,000 from Indian aunties that were just so happy that a woman was finally running. And on election day, the ticker didn't go past 19%. And I had put all my savings since law school into my race. I ran against the Democratic establishment, and so they were pissed off. When you lose an election, everyone knows you lose. So let's just say the Twitter sphere was not very nice to me the day after. And I think, as the women in this room can probably relate to, it's, you know, we feel like we got to do the job before we get the job. So failure is even exceptionally more hard for us, I think, than it often is for men who are so comfortable with rejection. You guys, you know, walk down the street, you hit on women, we tell you to piss off, and you just do it all over again. It's like in your DNA to get rejected, not in ours. So when I woke up the day after my election, I was devastated. And I was fortunate to get a call from Bill de Blasio, who saw something in me and who took a chance in hiring me.
Great. I'd love to quickly take a step back even before that to hear a little more about what led you to run for office the first time around to begin with, because it was, it couldn't have been an easy decision.
Yeah, I mean, so my family came here as refugees from Uganda, and so I've always been super passionate about public service. I didn't want to be a fire person when I was 12. I wanted to serve. And I graduated law school with $300,000 in student loan debt. I thought I'd move to New York, work at a white shoe law firm for 2 years, and then I'd be off to the races. And 2 years turned into 10. I found myself watching my mentor Hillary Clinton's concession speech, where she had this line where she said, just because I failed doesn't mean you shouldn't try too. And I literally thought she was talking to me. And so I walked into my boss's office at age 33, and I quit. And I decided to run. And I think I'm one of those people, like when I make a decision, I can't then take it back. And I probably didn't really even know what I was getting myself into. But I really do feel like too many people in our generation, we opt out. We look at the political system and we're like, I don't want to do that. It's probably even more so now than it was, 5 years ago. But I think that I can't keep screaming at CNN and throwing stuff at the TV and not actually try to do something about it.
It's certainly tempting to just opt out completely. I mean, this Congress is one of the worst Congresses in history in terms of numbers of bills that they've passed and everything. How did you get first involved more in the tech sphere? Was that during your time as Deputy Public Advocate?
It was actually through my my congressional race. In 2009, there was probably 2 meetups in the whole city. We weren't the community that we were today. But I really saw the potential, and probably was the first tech candidate in the country that started running on tech and talking about tech, because I really saw the opportunity, and I felt like as someone who's aspiring to be in politics, I was all about disruption and infiltration, and I was trying to do that in my sphere, and I saw people around me doing that in their sphere. I'm also married to a tech entrepreneur, was dating a tech entrepreneur, so I probably heard about it too all the time. And so, was very immersed in the community and saw the potential for innovation, and something that I really felt was missing in our city and in our country.
That's great. And it does seem like there's a lot of similarities between running a scrappy campaign and running a startup.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? What do you see as some of the clearest parallels?
I mean, it's starting something from nothing. Having to raise money and convince people to believe in you, having to make smart hiring decisions, often bad hiring decisions, having to market yourself is just like marketing basically a product. I think many of the experiences that I had in 2010 really helped me in launching Girls Who Code and thinking about what that model really looks like.
Great. Is there any one experience that you would point to say, this is something that directly impacted my founding experience?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a hustler. And in 2010, I learned to really ask for money and be unabashed about that, and to harass people and to stalk them. And that really helped when I was launching Girls Who Code, because for the first year and a half, Girls Who Code was just an idea in my head. And I had to convince really important, powerful people to back me before I even had a program or a sample, right, to show people what I was trying to build.
Great. And what were some of those first conversations like when you're going out, you're looking for sort of that first level of funding that's going to kind of kickstart your idea? Were you well received? Did people say, why would I give money to this?
I mean, I think it was, to be honest, a little mixed in the beginning. I think that for Girls Who Code, it's really taught me about the power of your own personal networks. So, my first contribution was through a guy named Alex Ablin, who was the community affairs person at Google. We were at a conference together. We're part of a group called Dot to Dot, which is basically a bunch of young people. We meet for a weekend and we try to, take over the world. And I was standing next to him. He said, Reshma, what are you working on? I'm trying to teach girls how to code. And I'm like, what do you do? He's like, I work at Google. I was like, cool, and we made a connection, and he got me my first $30,000. I was working on my book at that time, and so I was at another conference speaking, introducing a woman, and met Rochelle Parham, who was the CMO of eBay. I asked to interview her for my book. She said, Reshma, what are you working on? I said, I'm trying to teach girls how to code. She's like, here's a check. Same thing happened with Beth Comstock, who's the CMO of GE. And then, one day as I was trying to raise money, I sent an email kind of to my network of friends and said, I'm trying to start Girls Who Code to raise money to teach girls how to code. And 48 hours later, I got an email from Dick Costolo, the CEO of Twitter, saying, "I'd like for you to fly out and meet me." Because through my networks, it had ended up on Dick's desk. So I really do think like our own personal networks are incredibly powerful. You just don't know who's going to believe in you.
You make it sound very easy, but I'm sure that you have done a lot to really build that personal network. Do you think has it been active? Has it been sort of subconscious?
I mean, I think it's I don't come from much. My family are refugees. I didn't go to private schools. I've had to hustle for every relationship that I've had. But I've been really fortunate to meet people who believed in me. I met Jack Dorsey as he was probably getting kicked out of Twitter and I was getting kicked out of something. We bonded over a beer and ever since then, anything I've ever done, he has been the first person there. So I think that even amongst our own generation, there are people that we want to help each other and we support each other. But I think that I've never been, even Sheryl Sandberg, I stalk her. I was like, oh, I heard you're going to give away $1 billion. Do you want to give to Girls Who Code? And I ask for something outrageous at least once a month from her. And she ignores me half the time, but the other half the time she says yes. And so I think learning how to be shameless, is really, I'm serious, it's really, 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 really important.
Is there a line?
I'm sure there is, and I'm sure I've crossed it. Definitely in my political campaign, I'm sure that people were like, stop emailing me and asking me for money.
Right.
But if you don't ask, you don't get. And I know for me, the people who stalk me the most are the ones that I, no matter how busy I am, I eventually respond to. The other thing I want to say, though, I think that, it's really interesting. I had this experience with Girls Who Code at the same time. I ran for public advocate in 2013. I ran again. I lost again. And it was really interesting because I was having this political experience at the same time I was growing Girls Who Code. And when it came to Girls Who Code, the market was just open. It was like, Reshma, Oprah's on the phone. George Stephanopoulos would like for you to, $1 million, here's $1 million. Politics, it was like everything was so tough. I couldn't catch a break. And so I think sometimes there are ideas or moments that are so powerful that the world just opens up. And I really do believe with Girls Who Code, it has been that idea that was just so right and so needed and so not even new, but it was the right time. And I think that the world just opened up to it.
Do you think there are specific things that came into place to make it the right time for Girls Who Code?
I think it was, I think it's the growth of the tech industry. I think it's the fact that we're more digitally engaged. I think it's the rise of women, the fact that we're the majority everywhere in the ballot box, in the labor force, and as breadwinners in college. And I think it was like, what's going on here? The numbers are very stark. In the 1980s, 37% of computer science graduates were women. Today, that number is 12%. It's the only industry where you've actually seen a decline in women. So think about that. There were more women on the original Apple team than there probably are in any major technology device that any of us use today. As we are becoming more digitally engaged, it's a crisis.
Yeah. And so what are the factors then keeping girls and women from entering the tech sphere? So I was an engineering student at college, and we had less than 5% women in our graduating class. So I definitely hear what you're talking about. But what are those things that are keeping women from being more engaged in tech, whether it's coding or engineering or science and technology?
So I think it's two things. I think one is cultural. So in the 1970s, if you can believe this, 10% of doctors and lawyers were women. How many people today know of a female doctor or lawyer? Every hand should go up, right? So in 40 years, we turned that number from 10 to 50%. Why? Ally McBeal, LA Law, Grey's Anatomy, We constantly were inundated with these. I decided I wanted to be a lawyer because I saw Kelly McGillis and The Accused, right? We were constantly inundated with these lawyers, fabulous women that looked fly, you know what I mean, that were badasses, and we were like, I want to be her, right? We saw ourselves in them. Let's talk about technology. What do we see? We have the doll that says, I hate math, let's go shopping instead. I can walk into Forever 21 and buy a t-shirt that says allergic to algebra. Don't get me started on HBO's Silicon Valley show, where the only representations of women are B-list models and assistants, right? And so we're telling our girls that, like, this is not for you. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. And they're listening, and they're opting out. And so we really need to change culturally. And it's so deeply cultural. You know, I'm obviously Indian, grew up in an Indian family. When I was growing up, I had 3 choices from my father. He said, you can be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. That was it. Because I was responsible for bringing money home. We don't teach our girls in this country to chase capital, to pick jobs that are lucrative. We still teach them that some man's going to marry them and change their financial trajectory. I mean, it's crazy how many girls I talk to that say this. So until we change that, we're going to keep pushing women, and it's conscious, into industries that are less prestigious and that make less money. And that's what's happening with law and medicine now, right? As you make less money as a doctor, make less money as a lawyer, guess what? More women. Any industry that is prestigious, you'll see a drop in women. So we have to change that. The second thing is I'm going to take responsibility as women for the issue as well. So, you know, when I was growing up, both my parents were engineers. And my father would sit me at the table and he'd say, what's 5 plus 5? And I'd say 11. And he just gave up on me at a certain point. I gave up on myself. I got the only B in college in chemistry. Then I never took a math or science test again because, you know, I wanted to be perfect and be the valedictorian. And if you get B's, that's not going to happen. I copied my statistics homework when I was at the Kennedy School of Government. And so this kind of relationship with math and science haunted me for the rest of my career. We have to encourage our girls to get B's. We have to encourage them to fail. A lot of girls I talk to are like, I don't want to take computer science because I don't want to not get an A. It's too hard. So I think really changing that perception and really encouraging, again, this culture of failure is really important.
So here's the big question. How is Girls Who Code fitting into that pretty complex sort of societal set of norms?
Well, we're taking over the world.
All right.
One girl at a time. No, but seriously, we're building a movement. So, yeah. You know, one of the things, the number one requirement for my girls is they have to pay it forward. So when they go to Girls Who Code, our course is free, but they have to go teach another girl. And so they go back to their schools and their communities and they start Girls Who Code clubs, and they're ambassadors for the movement. And they are encouraging and teaching other girls to be obsessed and to learn how to computer program and bringing their passions and interest to that. And then, you know, too, I think as an organization, we are really trying to have that conversation about culture, you know, and we're kind of the organization that's really having it right now, but how do we really shift and change culture? So meeting those Hollywood writers and screenwriters and saying, how do you actually put in characters that look like us into these roles? And punishing those companies that don't, that further the sexism and that encourage women to not get engaged in tech.
What does punishing look like?
Punishing looks like not allowing companies who try to use Girls Who Code for brand cover to do that. So people ask to write us pretty big checks, and if they're not the right brand, we don't associate with them.
Okay. Yeah, that's fewer strict signals are stronger than money.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. Great. So let's talk a little bit more about the mechanics of Girls Who Code. First of all, how did it get started? You know, I'm picturing sort of 6 girls in a room, like, you know, classroom after school. Yeah. I'd love to hear just sort of how, you know, from that idea when you first got that $30,000 check, what was the next step and how did it progress from there?
So, I talked to a lot of educators and said, okay, one, what does a curriculum that's targeted at girls look like? And so we designed one. And so it's very project learning. So it's not like sitting in a room and forcing them to learn Ruby on Rails, but it's taking a week by week application of like mobile app development, website development that's really project based. And then the second thing is, so basically we take 20 girls, we put them in a classroom for 8 weeks, and we teach them how to computer program. We bring in female entrepreneurs because part of the problem is you can't be what you cannot see. And so if our girls have never seen a woman who runs a company, or who's an engineer, or who's a hacker that wears a hijab, like, you can't see yourself in that. We go on field trips to companies like Facebook and Twitter and Teen Vogue and the NYPD, and so people can see the use of technology. The first day we do a PowerPoint presentation on what it means to be a computer scientist, and we basically flip up Hillary Clinton and Beyonce. Because it really is, if you want to make music, people are now DJing on their iPads, right? If you want to find a cure to cancer, if you want to solve world hunger, technology is going to play a role in it. So it's not just about going to be an engineer or a computer scientist at a company, but it's about using technology to really problem solve. And that's really kind of our mission. So we went from 20 girls in 2010, or sorry, 2012 to, we're going to teach 3,000 girls this year. And so we have 19 programs. Thank you. We have 19 programs that are happening across the country right now in Boston, Seattle, Miami, New York, and California. They're happening at Facebook, Square, Intel, Intuit, eBay, Amazon, Microsoft, AT&T, Verizon, Adobe. Every single major technology company in America has 20 young girls, as we speak, learning how to computer program in their space.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we are just doubling, so every year. And so 7,500, and our goal there is to get girls to major or minor in CS. So 7,500 women majored in computer science last year. If half of our 380 girls do that next year, we're going to flip that number on its head within a decade. And that's the goal.
Great. And who are the girls that are actually participating?
So they're rising juniors and seniors in high school. Half of them are free and reduced lunch. 80% of them are minority. The thing about the lack of computer science education, Google just did a report, it's socioeconomic blind. So some of the wealthiest girls in America don't have access to computer programming, as do the poorest girls in America. So at Girls Who Code, our classrooms have Kafila, which is 3 generations of public housing and Bushwick houses, with Cora, who lives in the Upper East Side and goes to Bronx Science. And by the end of those 8 weeks, they are not only best friends, but they're learning how to code together. They're going to build a company together, and they've built a friendship and a relationship.
How do girls who go to Bronx Science not have access to computer programming? And I'm not challenging you. I'm just saying, like,
They're just not. It's let's just say they learn more at Girls Who Code in 8 weeks than they do in their classroom. Yeah. I mean, it's like there's only 20 schools in the entire city that teach computer science. Majority of the private schools don't. Yeah, and so when our girls graduate, they basically take the equivalent of a Stanford CS 101 exam, and they pass 85%. And I'm talking about our girls also from Detroit, which are from the depths of poverty, passing with an 85%.
So that's actually a great bit of a segue, because I know you started in New York, but you've expanded well beyond. Yeah. How many cities are you in now?
So Miami, Boston, Seattle, California, so Palo Alto, Mountain View, SF, San Ramon, and then New York. And then we ran programs in Detroit.
Okay, that's great. That's after 3.5 years?
This is our 3rd summer.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Okay, very cool, very cool. Yeah, just a quick reminder, you can tweet with #StartupGrindNYC if you have specific questions. Yeah. We've kind of covered everything in the past, but let's talk a little bit about the future. You have summer programs that you're running with girls in several cities. what's the next major evolution? You know, when you have more than 3,000, when you have 6,000, 10,000.
Yeah. I mean, so we run summer programs, and then we run Girls Who Code clubs, which are year-round. So that's 2 hours of coding we do a week. Yeah, I mean, listen, that's a big question. How do you go from 3,000 to 1 million?
Yeah.
And how do you scale?
Is 1 million a goal for you?
1 million is a goal for us. I mean, and I think the thing is that that's the problem oftentimes nonprofits face is scale. Like, scale is really a huge challenge. And so it's something as a team that we are going to really be focusing on, which is, you know, we turn away 5 girls for every 1 spot. And if we're really a movement that wants every girl to learn how to complete a program, we shouldn't have to turn away anybody. And so it's really about solving that problem and figuring out what are the other types of programs we can offer to our girls, whether it's a week and a half coding camp, you know, whether it's building a fee-for-service program, whether, you know, it's other types of products that we can actually create to make sure that we reach everybody.
Great. How would a fee-for-service model work, or have you moved toward that at all?
We haven't moved towards that. I mean, we've thought about whether, if there are girls that can afford to pay, should we be charging them to make more room for girls who can't afford to pay, without changing the dynamics of the classroom.
Yeah. But so far, nobody's actually paying.
All free.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Great. I wonder. Trying to figure out quite how to phrase this. Is this all right? So, is this something that goes beyond the United States? Because we're talking about societal issues. Obviously, different countries, different nationalities are going to have very different societal issues. You know, and you're probably hitting a point within the next few years where you will be in a lot of the major urban areas in the United States.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I have said no to international expansion because I really want to solve the domestic problem. And what's interesting is that we're actually far behind, like, as a country, Cambodia, Nigeria, India, and China. It's a problem that we face and, like, France and Britain faces for the same reason, right? Yeah. Because we're hyper-targeting this kind of pink stuff to girls, right? And we're really pushing the whole pink and princess thing, which is actually leading. So France has the same. I just met with a digital minister there. She has the same problem. Same problem in Britain. Not the same problem in India and China, Nigeria and Cambodia, where actually there is a culture of coding amongst women and girls. So, but at the same time, there may be a girl who wants to learn in Australia. I don't want to say no to anybody. And I think that we just have to figure out how we do that. So we've open sourced our club's curriculum so that, quite frankly, anybody in this room or in the world can download our curriculum and start a Girls Who Code club.
Do you have any sense of who's downloading it?
So we are just going through that right now. We've had basically over 300 girls or parents or educators across the country in 36 states apply to start a club.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So we're now figuring out how to serve everybody.
Okay.
So adding the rest of the world to that kind of frightens me a little bit right now.
Yeah, but I guess they say if something doesn't scare you, it's not worth doing.
Very true.
I would love to talk a little bit about sponsorship because it's one of the topics you cover in your book, in two regards, sort of sponsorship in sort of general women being sponsors and mentors for other women, as well as if there are aspects of that actually built into the program of Girls Who Code.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could just sort of give a quick primer on your idea behind sponsorship.
Yeah, so when I ran for Congress in 2010, I ran against another woman, and I got a lot of shit for that, and I didn't expect it.
Who did you get shit from?
I got a lot of shit from women's groups.
Really?
A lot, and it wasn't something that I had expected. And I think there's probably been only I would say, a handful of races in the entire country where 2 women have run against each other. And from my perspective, you know, I'm in the Title IX generation, like women, it's a good, like, honestly, if every single political race were 2 pro-choice women running against each other, that would be a great thing in my book, right? That's how we would really change, I think, the face of leadership. And, you know, when I lost my first race, I had raised more money than any challenger in the entire country. We were one of the top 10 races in the nation. I was the first South Asian woman to ever run. And so there was a lot that happened. And when I lost, nobody called me. I didn't get a phone call the next day being like, good job. Not this race, but the next one. You know, the women's groups didn't rally around this young woman of color who had run and said, okay, we're going to show you how to win the next time. And when guys run, that does happen. They do get them the appointment or the job or the next seat. And I think with women, we don't. And that's why you do have these abysmal numbers of women running. And I think even when it comes to the ballot box, right, there are times, and I saw this happen with Hillary in 2008, that women wore it as a badge of honor that they didn't vote for her, right? It was a sign of, oh, well, I'm not going to vote for her just because she's a woman. And I really feel like as we think about women's leadership, and all of us cringe when we see the numbers, right? And we're not getting past 18%, whether it's in Congress or in Fortune 500 CEOs, like we're not moving the needle. Why? So from my perspective, it's not about men. It's not even about sexism anymore. It's about us. We are now the majority in the workforce. 11 million of us have the power to make hiring decisions. We have to create a girls' club. I mean, let's be honest, it's like, we're not nice to each other. We're not nice to each other. We don't support each other. We don't elevate each other. And so if we're really gonna change the face of leadership, then we have to start changing ourselves. And that means hiring women. I probably shouldn't say this on camera, but I always do. But if I have 2 resumes and one's a man and one's a woman, they're both equally qualified, I hire the woman every time. Every single time. We need to, if there's a women's business that I can invest in or support in any way, shape, or form, I do. Any female candidate, I write a check, right? We have to, sponsorship, I get a physical high from hooking a sister up. Like, it is great. I'm super generous with my networks, and I'm only standing here because there were women who did that for me all the time. All the time. I'm a complete representation of the sisters in my life that tugged on their editor's sleeve and said, you should write about her, that wrote me a check when nobody else would, that voted for me. You know, I remember on, you know, election day, there in my public advocates race, there was a woman, she was coming out of the ballot box. I'm like, who'd you vote for? And she's like, oh, I voted for that really pretty foreign girl. I was like, that's me. But so many women just came to the ballot box, right? With my photo and my mail piece because they couldn't pronounce my name. But like it was, I saw it on election day, right? So to me, and hopefully, you know, I'm gonna have a very special person running for president in 2016, and I don't wanna see the same thing happen. Like, we gotta get it together. And I think that we have a huge opportunity to do that. So I say pick a successor that's a woman. Like when you have the position to elevate someone, elevate a woman. And we have to start changing the way we treat one another. Oh, and so your point is, so I indoctrinate my girls at Girls Who Code to do that. We are, and it's really awesome because they, you know, they're 16. So they're not even conscious of their gender, right? And they don't even think that there's an issue yet. So they come at this experience like girl power. Like, this was fun. I met some cool girls. Like, I want to meet some more cool girls. Like, it's such an uplifting thing. They say, like, I didn't know the power of my gender. I don't even know what that means, but awesome. You know, so it's this kind of, it's like this positive thing. It's not like we're being oppressed.
Right.
We need to fight somebody, but it's like, I love being a girl.
Yeah, you're working with people who don't know that there are social norms against them in the first place.
Yeah, and so when situations happen, like we saw at Tinder, or some of the other companies I won't mention, there's going to be an army of us, and we're going to take them on.
Cool. I would love to delve in, if you're up for it, a little bit more to, you said that there were specific women who sort of were pivotal at key moments for you. Are there any specific stories, specific women, specific points in your life where where one of these women made a key impact that sort of changed your trajectory?
Yeah, I mean, I talk a lot about Hillary Clinton, and she's, I don't talk to her on the phone every day, but I'd like to. But she has really been there for me at moments. Losing my last race was really hard for me because I realized that the world wasn't ready for me yet, and it may be a while till it is. And just getting a message from her of like, don't give up. Like, I believe in you. She's busy. She doesn't have to call me. And she did. And I think it's having people like that. Sheryl Sandberg has been a huge supporter of mine and Girls Who Code. Beth Consack, Rochelle Parham, Susan Line, Alexis Maybank, who's on my board. I mean, I can't even, countless. There's just countless women who have supported everything that I've done and who have been there and who really go the extra mile.
Yeah. Is there any thought or concern for Girls Who Code to be politically ambiguous? Would it be fair to say it's a democratic?
No, gosh, no.
Okay.
You're gonna get me in trouble. I think we have. It's really interesting. I actually think that we have lots of girls who are probably Republicans when I read some of their, feelings about transparency and different agencies. No, we're not a political organization. I actually think that one of the things that is really interesting about, we haven't passed a computer science bill. So there's an act that's been in Congress to help give federal funding to teachers who choose to go into this profession, because we have a massive teacher shortage right now. And where computer science sits, it's not a requirement for math or science, so it's an elective. And that is a state-by-state decision. So it's created a huge crisis in the education system because there's no real requirement to teach it, and there's not enough teachers who are incentivized to teach computer science, because guess what? You make a lot more money at Google than you do as a public school teacher teaching computer science. And so we've really tried, I think folks in the movement have really tried to get elected Republicans and Democrats alike to really change this issue. So in some ways, I feel like it's an apolitical issue.
Right. Interesting. It's really interesting to hear that, I guess at the end of the day, everybody, regardless of political party, wants to see their daughters succeed, wants to see them in professional careers they enjoy.
Going back to myself, we need to start encouraging that, right? That feeling of you must, don't be an Asian studies major, because you're not going to get a job, right? We have to really start encouraging that. And I think that given what's happening with the amount of the employment rate for young people, it is the right moment in our country's time to say, how do we push the next generation to do jobs that you're actually going to make money and do good?
Right. What does success look like for Girls Who Code? Will there be a moment where you say, all right, we've achieved what we set out to achieve because we hit this metric?
Yeah, it's gender parity, right? So it's probably how people
in every aspect?
In computer science in particular, because 71% of all STEM jobs are in CS. Yeah. So that's really where the economic growth is. I also think it's the most powerful thing about teaching girls computer science, it's not about gender parity for the sake of gender parity, but it's about what we do with it. How many women in this room, when you were young, you wanted to do something that was going to make the world a better place? Right? All of us. So same thing with my girls. And so for them, they want to learn computer science so that they can build an app to help fight bullying. Or their mother's obese and they want to help her. Or their father has cancer and they want to help him find a cure. Or, one of our girls, Ming, started an organization called Code Up to start teaching girls in Cambodia how to computer program, because that's where she's from. and the girls don't have access to technology. Another one of our girls, Alex, that's in our program here at AppNexus, is hearing impaired. And so she wants to create glasses to help people see when they go to the movie theater. So every single idea that they have is about something that they're facing or something that they're seeing or something that they can do to actually make the world a better place. And that's why it's so important to get girls access to computer science education. I mean, no offense to the boys, but I just don't feel like that's their same motivation as it is for young women.
Interesting. We're going to jump into Q&A from the audience. I'd love to start with Jess Goodman, who's actually from Oatworks, and Oatworks provided a bunch of juice over by the pizza.
Thank you for the juice.
So Jess's question is, how does the ability to code transfer to leadership? I.e., how does having the skill show girls that they can be leaders?
Yeah. So I think I kind of just touched on that a little bit, right? But, you know, for me, even when I was running for office, I wanted to fix my website. And it was frustrating that I couldn't just do that. You know, coding is, I mean, my 10-year-old niece is like making a website for her grandfather right now. She's 10. So like coding is like speaking, talking, writing. It's just a skill set that you just have to have, I think, to survive in society today. So I think having that and not feeling like, you know, so many women I talked to who wanted to start a company and weren't technical, felt insecure talking to their engineers, explaining their issue. And so many women now that I've talked to who've even done a General Assembly course or a Flatiron course feel so much more comfortable now speaking technically, talking to engineers about their business idea than they did prior to having that skill set. And I think that that's why it's so important. And you'll see, I think, a huge increase in the amount of female founders.
Great. We have a question from Melanie Almeida. Hey, how's it going? She has a great question. Do you plan on expanding Girls Who Code to a larger range of age, women who miss the chance to learn CS?
Yeah. So it's really hard. So hard. So, you know, when I started Girls Who Code, one of my board members made me kind of whiteboard the space to see where we sat. And we really found that there were lots of other great people doing other things, either younger or older. So Girl Develop It is doing a great job teaching women how to computer program. And I think that there are more organizations that are kind of getting into this space. So we're really sticking with our market. You know, we probably will go a little bit younger, so we're starting at like 6th grade. But I think that as we're doing our evaluation to see what's happening with our girls once we graduate, I can see us kind of starting chapters or something in college to make sure that our girls are actually graduating and getting jobs in the sector. But I don't. There's already a Women Who Code organization, so we can't do that.
Are there any platforms or other great tools out there that you've seen that would, you know, slightly more general, but would help people learn to code?
I actually think if somebody's looking for a business idea, that's one. There are probably 1 out of 4 emails that I get are from a woman saying, can you teach me how to code? So clearly there's a market that's out there that's not being tapped. And so I do think that we learn in a different way. And so I do think that there needs to be like a code academy for women.
All right.
So someone here should start that.
Any volunteers? All right, we have a question from Margot Slav. Hey, Margot. How do you protect the girl power bubble you create during the 8 weeks once they enter the real world?
So, you know, they build their own sisterhood. It's kind of amazing to watch, right? So they build, something magical happens in the classroom. I don't even know what it is, and I'm not going to even take credit for it. But something happens, and these relationships kind of continue. They go watch movies together. They hang out. They build things together. They have a Facebook group that is insane. You know, we had a situation where there's this thing called HS Hacks in California. So it's this big kind of, a bunch of high schools come together and they hack. And, you know, one of our girls, Teresa, you know, sent me an email being like, Reshma, can you help me find some sponsors? And so I looked at the website, and of course it's like a bunch of dudes in doing their thing, right? And there's no pictures of any girls, even though in their mission statement it says one of the things we want to do is encourage more women to get into computer programming. So I was like, Teresa, you should not be signing up for this until you change that whole thing they have going on, their look and their leadership. And so she did that, and she really infiltrated the entire organization. So they're doing that on their own, and it's really powerful to watch. I think we throw them in the deep end so much. Like they literally last year presented to Sheryl Sandberg Facebook apps that they had created. They participated in the White House Science Fair. They had to present to every single major CEO and like tell them what's wrong with their APIs. That by the time that they graduated, they were just like these insane 16 and 17-year-olds that were so confident and resilient and like fearless. And I think that they're taking that to their communities and into their classrooms.
What are some of the coolest projects you've seen come out of Girls Who Code?
Oh my God, so many. One of my favorites is an app called Let It Flow to help find a bathroom when you're walking down the street, which is really critical. I love it. I mentioned Ming, who created an organization called Code Up to help teach girls in Cambodia how to computer program. Our girls, none of you here seem to have children. I could be wrong, but when okay, we have one. You have just yours, yes. So are you in public school? So you remember when you were in 8th grade and you had to pick your high school, and they gave you that huge book? Do you know what I'm talking about? Right. They give you this. So they basically, New York City pretty much gives you this huge book and says, go pick what school you want to go to. If you're a working parent, you don't have time for that. So our girls actually built a mobile app, and they put all that information on so you can just click, click, click what you want, boom, and it spits out. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. We're trying to get the folks in the city to actually use it. So those are kind of 3.
Okay, great. Question from Titus Saikowski. Where are you, Titus? Hey, Titus. So he has a simple question, which is, what do you think about accelerators for women? I guess there is a larger question there of what happens next after girls complete Girls Who Code. Where do they go from there? But we'll start with Titus's question, which is, what do you think about accelerators specifically focused for women?
I think accelerators for women are great. I think having a supportive environment with women, I think is important. I have a friend who started a female founders fund. So she basically runs a VC fund that invests in women's businesses. So I think as much support that we can offer women is really important.
Great. And then what are the next steps for the girls coming out of Girls Who Code? Obviously this is only going to be the third summer.
So one is getting them in college. Okay. So, and getting them into CS programs in college. So our girls this year are going to Berkeley, Stanford, Harvard, CUNY, University of Michigan. I mean, every single school in the country. And then secondly is helping them get internships. So our girls are at AppNexus, Qualcomm, they're at AOL right now. So getting them into the tech community. I mean, pretty much we drop them off at college. Like that's kind of our entry. That's our what's it called?
So you're the proud parent.
Yes,
we are shoving them off into the dorm
at college.
Great, awesome. Another question from Hidden Gems Women.
That's me.
The question is, can you talk more about your book? How is it different from Sheryl Sandberg's book?
How is it different from Sheryl Sandberg's book? I don't know how it's different from her book. I think it's more targeted, I guess, at a younger audience. And it's more advice driven. So I wanted to really offer kind of how-tos. So, one of the things I say is, really solicit negative criticism. My father, after I lost my race, sent me a 3-page email of the 10 things that I did wrong. Like at my wedding, a bunch of people stood up and said, Reshma, I hope you run for office. My father's like, have some friends who tell you you're not that great. So he's the person in my life that like takes it all down for me. My husband, on the other hand, is like my biggest cheerleader. So the day after I lost my election, he jumps on my bed and is like, let's go lose again. And I was like, great. He would divorce me if I came home today and said, I'm done. He believes in me more than I believe in myself at times. And so I think having people in your life that do that is really important. I think the second thing is really about really doing a cost-benefit analysis of your life, and knowing when it's time to go. Oftentimes we as women, we stick with things even though we're done because we're afraid to move on. And sometimes it's as easy as taking out a piece of paper and thinking about all the glasses of wine that you drink, all the fights that you pick with your significant other, all the shoes you buy that you don't really need simply because you hate your job. And then figuring out how to go.
We have a question from Casey Stafford. Hey, how's it going, Casey? The question is, what is Girls Who Code doing to change branding targeted at girls, since it is a major hurdle for girls in tech?
Yeah. It's something we're working on now. One of the things that we want to do in November is actually have a convening to have a conversation with different folks in the industry to talk about what we can do. We're having a dinner in the Valley in 2 weeks where Beth Comstock is actually pulling together a bunch of CMOs to start talking about how we can shift branding. I was the spokesperson for Barbie Entrepreneur last week, and I was proud of them, right, for moving kind of in that direction. I just did a voiceover with Verizon on a campaign called Inspire Her Mind, which everybody should check out if you haven't seen it already. Inspire Her Mind. It's already gotten 3 million views. But it's targeted, and it hasn't even come, it's going to go on air in September, but it's really targeted at parents and all the kind of subtle things that we do to discourage our girls to go into these fields. It's really powerful. And so, we are doing a big campaign with CoverGirl, and that's going to happen in September. So we are creatively, and we're in the process of building out, we're finishing a creative brief to do a viral video that hopefully will take the world by storm in September, October. So that's what we're really focused on in 14 and 15, are all these different ways that we can actually influence and change culture.
There's a topic we haven't really covered so far, which is relevant to a lot of the audience here, which is the impact that men can have on this whole space. And I guess simply I would ask, what recommendations do you have for men who want to get more involved, who want to see their daughters or other women more involved in tech? So
our biggest allies are men, especially men with daughters, because they see what's happening. And I mean, we really wouldn't be here for now. I mean, if it weren't for some major male CEOs who are like, this needs to happen because I have a daughter and I saw that shift happen between 8th and 9th grade. And now all of a sudden she hates math when I knew she liked it. So, having men be a part of this movement, I think is super critical. And like what they can do, I mean, building things with your daughter, taking her to a maker fair, creating something, welding, right? Doing all these things that you typically do with your sons, doing them with your daughters is really, really, really critical. But also not getting frustrated that your daughter loves makeup and fashion and pink. And one of the baddest companies I've seen recently is Mink. The woman who's doing 3D printing for makeup. It's like they are, and I'm serious about this whole Beyonce coding thing. Technology can really revolutionize the things that maybe young girls are immediately interested in, and that's a great thing, and we should encourage that.
Awesome. Let's give a big thank you to Reshma for doing this.